What if Gojo was killed by Toji in the hidden inventory arc? Would the story still proceed the same way, or will everything collapse without his presence? Well, after days of thinking, I've come to the conclusion that this is the only logical way the story could proceed without Gojo's presence as the most powerful sorcerer. I also added another intriguing theory in the video, but we will get to that later. Starting from the events of the hidden inventory arc, following the death of Gojo, what will happen to Ghetto? Well, Ghetto will experience similar development as he did canonically. This time around, the title of the strongest sorcerer will go to Ghetto, and he will probably take on all those missions Gojo would have taken. With Gojo gone, a lot of curse users will come out of hiding, and a large number of curses will also be released. This will result in an even greater workload on Ghetto, as he would have to take an increased number of missions and absorb an increased number of curses as well. All of this will be a major source of stress for him. Adding on top of that, Habara's death and the twins' suffering will make him go rogue again. After losing his best friend, he would be even more angrier and hostile towards people. But what about the other characters? Well, if Gojo wasn't there, Megumi will be sold off to the Zenin clan. He will likely grow up with a different kind of mentality, drawing inspiration from the methods of the Zenin clan. Toji will not interfere with anything related to Megumi, since he didn't seem interested in him at all. Speaking of the Zenin clan, what will happen to Maki? Well, with the current turn of events, Maki will most likely no longer be a student at Tokyo High too. After learning about Toji, she will lead the Zenin clan and will have much more freedom. There is also a chance that Toji might take her in, considering the possibility that they both are similar in terms of their heavenly restrictions. Now, what will exactly happen during the Cursed Child arc? Well, Yuta, after contracting the Rika curse, will be taken into custody by the higher-ups of the Jujutsu Society. He will be sentenced to execution, and no one will be there to take him in. There's a chance some higher-ups will realize his potential, but they will still think of him as a threat to society. Thus, they will eliminate him as soon as they see the opportunity. This time around, Ghetto wouldn't have much of a reason to target Jujutsu High, as Rika won't be present there. But contrary to that, there is still a good chance he will be attacked by Kenjaku himself. Kenjaku needs to possess the body of a strong sorcerer who is adept at curse manipulation to carry out his plans, and Ghetto is his best option. Seeing as Ghetto would be at his weakest point, Kenjaku will be able to take advantage of this and defeat Ghetto, transplanting his brain into his body and overtaking him. As seen, losing Gojo led Ghetto towards a dark destiny. Not to mention the last of the dynamic trio, Shoko will also be severely affected, and there's a chance she might give up being a sorcerer now that she has lost both of her friends. Yuji will face a similar case as Yuta, and being even more dangerous than Yuta. The higher-ups won't fall back in making their decision to execute him. Yuji's fate won't change unless Kenjaku has a use for him. Seeing how he has the potential to take all the fingers and revive Sukuna, Kenjaku could salvage Yuji and utilize him in his plan. However, due to the fact that it took them some time to realize Yuji's actual presence and capabilities, he will most likely be executed by them. So what happens to the other Jujutsu High students? Well, moving forward, the only first years will be Megumi and Nobara. During the events of the Ishu Detention Center, both of them will face off against a special grade finger bearer curse. This time, neither Yuji nor Sukuna will be present to handle them. So either Nobara or Megumi will end up sacrificing themselves so the other can escape. Given the history of Nobara, as she was in the pinch in the original timeline, she is more likely to sacrifice herself than Megumi. Megumi might also not be as friendly, seeing as he was already grumpy in the original series. How much more would he be in this scenario? Jogo will also be more active now that no one has taken care of him, and the human world will also face many more consequences. Following the events that occurred in this timeline, what do you think will happen in the fight against Mahito? Well, this time, as Yuji won't be around, the only one dispatched will be Nanami. Junpei will still be used by Mahito and will suffer the same fate, considering the fact that Nanami already nearly lost to Mahito alone and was about to be killed if Sukuna, residing inside Yuji's body, didn't interfere. This time around, the same situation will come to pass, and Nanami will lose his life in the battle against Mahito when Mahito activates his domain expansion. With all those losses, how will the Kyoto Goodwill event proceed now? Well, seeing how Tokyo High only has a few students remaining, namely Fushiguro, Inumaki, and Panda, the Kyoto Goodwill event will get cancelled, and they will focus on giving more missions to each of the students as well as finding more sorcerers to fill their ranks. Moving forward, this video will contain heavy spoilers about Gojo Satoru, Sukuna, and the ongoing story of Jujutsu Kaisen. If you haven't read the manga, I'd suggest you read up to chapter 229 to avoid ruining your experience. The number of active curses will be significantly higher. This will speed up the process Kenjaku has been following. Thus, the Culling Game arc will be enacted much quicker than before. So what does this mean? Well, the Jujutsu forces will be much weaker and the chaos will spread much faster. No one will be able to stand up against Kenjaku, Jogo, Hanami, or even and Mahito. Kenjaku will still absorb Mahito as he always planned to, while the sorcerers will keep losing their lives. It will all end in the favor of Kenjaku. His goal of evolving humanity by optimizing curse energy will possibly come true. In this timeline, Fushiguro and Toji, who we assume will fight for humanity, will be the only strong forces left, and maybe Maki, under the guidance of Toji, will become as strong as she is now. Everyone else will face a cruel or unsatisfactory death. This is the outcome of events in this timeline without the presence of Gojo Satoru. Gojo was more than an overpowered side character. He was the only one that was keeping humanity from the brink of destruction. So if you don't want humanity to end, how about subscribing to the channel? Now that we have talked about this scenario that the Jujutsu world would have faced if Gojo died in the hidden inventory arc, let's talk about the interesting theory I mentioned earlier, which is, what if Sukuna's toes also gave powers in addition to his fingers? Sukuna's fingers are a special grade cursed object that contain the remnants of Sukuna's soul in the form of a cursed spirit. In all, there are 20 fingers of Ryomen Sukuna that exist currently in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. If we were to add Sukuna's 10 toes as well, then the amount of soul or cursed energy will be divided even more in each of the digits. Not to mention the fact that Yuji will have to consume someone's toes now as well. However, stick until the end of the video because we'll tell you what would happen if his powers weren't distributed evenly and his toes just gave the consumer a boost instead. But did you know, in a recent fanbook, Akutami Sensei mentions that the fingers taste like soap. This is due to it being sealed in wax for over 1,000 years. But what would the toes taste like? Anyway, if Sukuna regained all his fingers and toes, would he also regain his true form? Sukuna's true form is a demon with 2 faces and 2 sets of eyes. He also has 4 hands, making a total of 20 fingers, and his brutish muscular build. This forced other sorcerers to join hands together to kill him off. But before they managed to do this, they sealed off his power in 20 fingers. Sukuna's real form enabled him to wield evil back in the day, but after his physical body was killed, he now relies on taking control of others to operate. This means that his physical body won't take the same shape again, and he would have to rely on the operator's body to continue his nefarious plans. So now what will this change do to our character's stories? Well, to start with Yuji's motivation, it will now change from just collecting 20 fingers to also collecting 10 toes before he is executed. This means there will be more special grade toe and finger bearing curses. This will bring about more issues for the humans as these curses might be more active in this run of the timeline. And how will this change and affect the plot? Well, considering that Yuji gains more power as he intakes more fingers, he will be weaker in the starting arcs as he will have consumed much less of Sukuna's fingers and toes. But this won't change the outcome due to the fact that he didn't directly face any stronger opponents alone. There was always someone present beside him to help him at all times. The real ingestion of fingers took place in the Shibuya incident arc when the twins and Jogo fed Yuji with 11 more fingers. This took him to a total of 15 out of 20 fingers. In the original timeline, there is a possibility that they will be able to gather even more toes and fingers combined in this plotline. Let's consider the possibility that they will still feed Yuji 11 fingers, but they will have like 5 to 7 toes gathered. This will take Yuji to the same power level as he was in the original story. This is considering that the power was subdivided in each of the toes and fingers equally. Just how scary will Sukuna be at this power level? On 1 finger Sukuna was already scary. At 15 fingers and 7 toes, he would just be short of the calamity Akutami claimed him to be. He toyed with Jogo to his heart's pleasure in the Shibuya arc, and also defeated Mahoraga, the strongest Shikigami of the 10 Shadows technique, with just a tiny hiccup. But even this fight was not enough to capture Sukuna's true strength. Up to the recent point, Itadori Yuji had only consumed 15 fingers. These weren't enough for Sukuna to take over Yuji's body. Now considering he ate 7 toes on top of that, at this point of the story, will that be enough? Well, if we look at it from the view that 15 fingers in the original timelines have the same amount of cursed energy as 15 fingers and 7 toes in this timeline, it would be simple to assume that consuming these also won't give Sukuna any control over Yuji's body, at least not yet. Will 20 fingers and 10 toes Sukuna take over Yuji? Quite possibly, but Yuji dismissed this possibility post Shibuya. He told Yuta that Sukuna would not take over him, but if he did so, Yuta should kill him. Even in the final climatic clash between the strongest of today, Satoru Gojo, and the strongest in history, Sukuna has consumed 15 out of the 20 fingers and has complete control over Megumi's body and the cool 10 Shadows technique. As it looks like, Sukuna doesn't need all his fingers to regain his powers. The same could be the case for his toes. Thus throughout the story up to the Shinjuku Showdown arc. Even in the new timeline, Sukuna would have only consumed 15 fingers and 7 toes. But what if Sukuna's powers weren't equally distributed in his toes and fingers, and his toes just gave some extra power? Well, then this means at the beginning of the series, Sukuna is already at more than half his true strength. This would mean he would take over Yuji much more easily, and if he took took over Megumi with that kind of power, Gojo would most certainly not survive and the end of humanity as we know it would arrive. That's it for the what if theory of if Toji killed Gojo. If you want to switch things up, why don't you check out this video of what if Gyutaro was the only Upper Moon 6? What are you waiting for? Click it.